and unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning to those folks that are with us virtually, and really, too. And Millie, right? Yeah. Welcome to your first time here. There's a Buddhist teaching, early Buddhist teaching, that says that all things are impermanent, all conditioned phenomena are suffering, and nirvana is peace. That's one of the teachings about the nature of existence from the Buddhist perspective, that everything is impermanent, everything's constantly changing. There's no stable, inherent, perduring reality to get a hold of. Everything's in a state of constant flux. That's the first one. All things are impermanent. And one might say, therefore, all conditioned phenomena are suffering. What is meant by that is when we look for something to get a hold of, when we look for something that will be stable and reliable, when we grasp at things, when we desire to have them, desire to get away from what we don't want to be around, we suffer. And in nirvana, if you will, the Buddhist goal in life is peace. So those three things work together. When we let go, when we stop grasping at things, we find some composure, we find some peace. So what does that mean for practice? What does that mean for our sitting practice, our zazen, our meditation? How do we employ, if that makes sense to us, we examine experience and realize that everything is impermanent, that as Dogen Zenji says, that flowers fade even though we love them. Weeds grow even though we don't like them. When we recognize that things are in the state of flux, and we realize that grasping at things is painful because of that, and we recognize our longing for peace and composure, how do we practice? And I would really want to affirm that the word goal is a four-letter word in Zen. G-O-A-L. It's a four-letter word in English too, but having a gaining idea, having a goal is problematic. But so with quotation marks, I'd like to emphasize that the goal of practice, quotation marks, is peace. Simple, straightforward peace, but how to actually attain that goal is the question. One phrase that I would like to recommend for contemplation when working towards this goal is something that Suzuki Roshi said when his wife would like to poke at him and challenge him. And one day she said, "Explain Buddhism to me in one sentence." And he said, "Accept everything as it is and help it to be its best." So that's a sentence. Accept everything as it is and help it to be its best. So that's an interesting sentence for me, because it has acceptance on the one hand and then helping on the other. And I think it's a very good sentence. It might sound subtly contradictory. You know, how can you help things be their best if you accept them? If you don't, and if you're trying to change things, you're not accepting them. However, another way to look at it is, if you just accept things, that's kind of like resignation. If you just accept things and they happen to suck, well, they just suck, and just accept that they suck. And it's a defeatist resignation. If, on the other hand, all you want to do is improve things, and you're always fighting things that are wrong that need improving, that can feel very oppressive, and there's no peace there. There's always critique, there's always flaw. And so if you have one without the other, you fall into a bit of a trap, I think. If you adopt dogmatically the notion that we simply must accept everything as it is, then when things suck, when there's harm, oppression, injustice, then we don't help things if we're dogmatically attached to accepting things as it is. And if we're always trying to improve things, we're always finding fault, and there's no rest. There's perpetual agitation. So I think these two can complement each other. And when our commitment is to peace as the way, peace as the path, we need both of them. They're both necessary. And as a parenthetical aside, that phraseology, accept everything as it is. Things as it is. That was a favorite expression of Suzuki Roshi. And one time, a person who was transcribing one of his talks, I think it was a transcriber, but anyway, a student approached him and says, "Roshi, don't you mean accept things as they are?" He says, "No, I mean things as it is." So that's a very classical Zen teaching, that within multiplicity there's unity. That on the one hand, there's various things. There's us, 5 people in this room, people that are with us online. There's a computer and a camera, a lectern, all these things. But on the other hand, there's one whole being that is just constantly mutating into a new form, and we're inseparably interconnected, and we can't be isolated from one another. How we manifest our own body and mind has its effects on the whole. If we have ease within our own being, that ease will have an effect. Likewise, if we're agitated in our own being, if somebody were to come into this room profoundly agitated, we would feel it. And so, on the one hand, there's various different beings and things. And on the other, there's one whole being that cannot be separated. So I wanted to, that's a bit of an aside, because the main teaching today is peace and accepting things as it is and helping them to be their best. But that things as it is, I want to explain that We have a very deliberate phraseology that Kiboshi shows. Merging of difference in unity is an ancient Chinese Zen poem, Santo Kai. And that one phrase of his encapsulates that whole teaching. But back to peace. I cannot emphasize strongly enough my desire to convey that that be the fundamental, the prime directive for us Trekkies. That's the prime directive, peace. And if your Zazen practice, if your meditation practice becomes yet another task that you want to master and accomplish, that can be a problem. So how do we actually manifest those two principles of acceptance and helping, nurturing, help things to be their best? How do we nurture our practice so that we grow in peace? So let's talk about Zazen. Let's talk about this seated practice here. I like to say that when you come to your Zazen practice, your sitting practice, first you find your seat. But by that, what I mean is sit down as if sitting down for the first time. Sit down as if I've never done this before. Let me figure out how to actually find the seat. So in other words, you just don't plop down habitually. You approach the seat, you bow to it. It's the Bodhimanda, the seat of awakening. It's not just any old place. It's a very special place. It's the seat of enlightenment. And after you bow to your seat, you turn and bow away from the seat. I recommend you do this at home in your own meditation space as well, that when you begin to sit, it's time to meditate, that you bow to the seat, you acknowledge how it supports your practice and how everything supports. And in acknowledging how your seat supports your practice, you're also acknowledging how everything supports your practice, the great earth and the sky, that the whole universe is there supporting you. That's the spirit when we got to our seat, gratitude for the support we receive in our practice. And then you sit down, and you don't plop down, but you sit down. One time, Reb Anderson was talking about mindfulness. And he says, when you say if you approach a chair and you're going to sit in that chair, you just plop into it without any mindfulness, without habitually, without full awareness. That's a net energy loss. When you sit down with mindfulness, with care, that's a net energy gain. Habit energy, unmonitored, can be depleting. The more we live habitually, the more we're losing our vitality. And if you practice mindfulness in some way, in some sphere, say doing the dishes, mindful walking down the white path by the river, mindful closing of your car door is a big one, because how many of us just habitually slam the car door shut. If you practice mindfulness in any sphere, you'll see how if you gently bring awareness to the activity, it's energizing. You feel it. You feel what in Chinese they call the qi, the vital energy of the subtle body being cultivated and nurtured by just being very present to what you do. In anything you do, you can feel that. You can examine that. And I recommend you do that. That, plopping down in the chair, Reb said, net energy loss. Sitting down in the chair, net energy gain. So explore that with mindfulness. You know, extend your practice off of your cushion as well in this way, and just study. Just study, you know, what does it feel like when you do things mindfully? Pick something you usually do habitually. And you notice, hey, I habitually just swing the door closed and slam it shut. And choose that specific thing. Okay, from now on, I'm going to try to remember to close that door mindfully. And then just study what happens when you do that practice. You know, if you pick something specific and you study there, you know, what happens when you do it habitually versus what happens, how it feels when you do it mindfully. Then you could study that in that specific context, then you can spread that practice out into other spheres, other places. And another thing that he said, you know, how do you sit down in a chair mindfully? And he said, well, one thing you can do is consider that you can't be entirely certain that the chair is going to support your weight this time. Because actually one time he told us that he went and visited some Zen student that was elder to him at the time. When he was a young Zen student, he visited this person, and he sat down in this chair, which happened to collapse when he sat down on it. And the person that he was visiting says, "You're rather dense, aren't you?" You know, double entendre on, you know, the word dense, you know, specific gravity and lack of mental acuity. So Redwood said, you know, when you sit down, entertain the notion that you don't know for sure that this chair is going to support your weight. You know, and then you bring a lot of attention to what you're sitting down. Take nothing for granted. You know, mindfulness, that could be, you know, one definition of mindfulness is take nothing for granted. You know, each moment of your life, take nothing for granted. It's there now before you, revealing true being. But it may be gone in the next moment. So washing the dishes, that warm water, don't take it for granted. Feel that warmth, see those bubbles, feel the heft of the bowl. So mindfulness, you know, mindfulness is, don't take it for granted that, you know, that the chair is going to support your weight. Don't take it for granted that we have air to breathe right now. Don't take it for granted that the sun is shining now. You know, that's mindfulness, taking nothing for granted. So back to Zazen. So when you sit down, you find your seat. Don't take it for granted. Sit down with care, not just plopping yourself down. And then explore your posture. You know, feel your spine. Rock your body around. You know, Dogen says to rock it right and left. But you can also rock us forward too. And feel the vertebrae and the pelvis. It's their relationship. And slowly exploring your posture, find your seat. Don't take your seat for granted, but with some care and attention, find it. Then that's the first step in Zazen practice, is you find your seat. Now, the reason I take this as the first point of Zazen practice is, and I've told this story before, I'll tell it again, is at a talk at Green Gulch Farm Zen Center, Norman Fisher made the statement that I found really intriguing, because we were all in the Zendo for the Dharma talk, sitting in Zazen, and he says, it will take you some time to find your seat, but the effort is worth it. And here we are, we're already sitting. So he meant something more than the literal, you know, find your seat. You sit here, you sit over there. No, finding your home, finding your refuge, finding peace in your endeavor of the way in meditation practice. Finding your home, finding composure, you know, where this is natural. The ease of Zazen is home. You're intimate with it. It's no longer some aspirational thing separate from you, but it is you. Because Zazen is you, just your own human life. So that's the other side of finding your seat, is finding composure in practice. And one secret to finding composure in practice is not to place it as some aspirational thing separate from you, but just an expression of your being, an expression of your heart. The second stage, in quotation marks, in your Zazen practice, in your sitting practice, is being in your own skin, inhabiting your body. I think it was The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where the author, that Walter lived a short distance from his body. Very interesting phrase. He lived a short distance from his body. He wasn't in his body. And how often are we not in our bodies, where we're not really fully inhabiting the body? So the next stage in Zazen practice is be in your body. Feel what is to be felt there. With the breathing, you just take in the sensations of the body. You can do this systematically. And I did for a while in what is commonly called a body scan, where you start at the top of the head and you feel the sensations of the scalp. You just bring awareness to what the scalp feels like, whatever sensations are there. Sometimes they say you can imagine breathing in and out through the scalp as a way of focusing attention. And you just feel what's there. That's all. With as much vividness as you can bring into awareness, you feel what's there, accepting what's there. And then you slowly move down, as if you're in some MRI machine or some other device that's where the aliens are scanning you, have abducted you, they're scanning you with some sort of light beam. You just bring your awareness down through the body, bring it to the forehead, feel what's there. Breathe in and out at the forehead. Or the eye sockets, the musculature around the eyes. Now, when you get to these areas, when you do it with the scalp, it's probably not getting a whole lot of feedback. You'll feel something, but it's just kind of neutral. When you come to the forehead and the eyes, chances are you're going to feel something, we'll call it tension maybe. There's some more going on when you bring awareness to the eyes. Accept it as it is. Don't try to change it. Just breathe there and accepting it. And most likely, you'll feel something pleasant. You'll feel some release, some letting go. Without trying to mess with it, you help it. That is key. If you do the body scan, and you just do it without trying to interfere with things, but receiving the input, receiving the data and accepting the data as clearly as you can, non-judgmentally, there is likely to be a release. If you bring yourself to the point, to the moment, and just support what's happening in the forehead, support what's happening in the eyes through presentness and acceptance. You help it, and it releases. Oftentimes, if you judge it, then you'll probably furrow your brow even tighter, because this sucks. I got so much tension in my life, And so if you judge it, you're probably gonna, as tension bad, then that won't help so much. But if you accept it and invite it into a state of ease and composure, then there may be release. So that's key. So step 2 is, inhabit your body, accept your body, help your body to be its best by just being lovingly attentive to what's happening in the body. There is a method. The method could be the body scan, you're applying a method. Or it could be just feeling whatever spontaneously arises in the sphere of the body, which is how I practice now. I don't usually do a body scan. I just, feel what's in the body. Feel, sometimes sometimes awareness of my thigh muscles come up because they're stretched a bit right now. Sometimes the forehead comes up. But there is a method. But more important than the method is the commitment to peace. Because if you take up a method, you can be trapped by the method. You could use that method to judge yourself or set up a goal that you try to grasp at. So be gentle with the method. Whatever it is, more important than the method is the commitment to accepting everything as it is and hoping it to be its best. The love, the nurturing that practice is about. Then the next step would be the mind. In particular, what we call discursive thinking. Have you noticed that you tend to keep on thinking all the time? There's some kind of inner narrative, inner storytelling happening habitually all the time. In Sanskrit, that's called papanka, which means thought upon thought, the proliferation of thought. There's traffic out there, but it's a Sunday, it's kind of quiet. Did you hear that kid crying a while ago? I wonder what that was about. I hope they weren't, being parented badly. And, kids sometimes cry. I remember once my son, he accidentally touched a hot light bulb at Chicago Space and Science Center, and he tried. So I could see that he wanted to cry, but he's with his daddy, and he just refused to cry. If he wanted to impress his daddy, he was maybe 5 years old. So what I did then, and there's bells going on, you can ring my bell, ring my bell. So right there, what I'm trying to do is show you how we can, that's prapanka. We're just, thought leads to thought, leads to thought. We're just restlessly spinning thoughts. But we don't necessarily experience it as restless, because we become habituated to it. We don't recognize the constant dis-ease of our being. And the practice of peace, of Zen, is to recognize whatever perpetual state of dis-ease we're in and help it. You gotta accept it. You can't pretend it's not there. But how do you help it? So in the stage of mind, first we found our seat with care, with awareness. Then we inhabited our body. We came back home from that short distance we were living away from our body, probably, a lot of the time. We come back. Next stage is this busy mind, this restless mind, what we call in Zen the monkey mind. Working with that, inhabiting that, inhabit your mind. Well, how do you inhabit your mind? Well, usually we recommend placing the awareness on the breath, feeling the in-breath, feeling the out-breath, inviting the mind to calm, breathing in, breathing out, perhaps counting silently the exhalations. Some people say 1 through 10. When I do it, and I sometimes still do it to settle my mind. Just as I practice the method of the body, I practice the method of counting the breath. I count 4. I just find it's less of a journey. I find it's helpful for me. So classically, Zen teachers usually recommend 10, but I do 4, so you can try either one. And you just silently to yourself count the exhalations, the point being that we're bringing awareness to the sensation of breathing. And in order to actually be aware of the sensation of breathing, we have to pay attention. And we can't pay attention if the mind is busy thinking about something. So this is a stage of practice where we're trying to get some purchase on the restlessness of the mind, to invite the mind to relax. But we have to accept it as it is and help it to be its best. Which means we don't try to stop thinking. We don't try to squeeze down the thinking apparatus and throw it out. We let thoughts come, and we let thoughts go. We don't attach to them. Prapanka is the attachment to perpetual thinking, the chain of thinking that I tried to demonstrate a while ago. But a thought arising and then dissipating, and then you feel the breath, where you're not continuing a narrative based upon a thought, but you have a thought, oh, I wish this thought were over now. And you also, oh, I had that thought of bored with the thought. Well, let's turn my attention back and listen. Let's feel the breath. So you cut. You don't suppress, but you cut through the noise of the mind gently with perseverance. Just getting a little purchase on the restlessness of the mind. You notice the spinning mind, and then you let it go, and you feel the breath. So, Suzuki Roshi would say that let thoughts come, let them go. Just don't entertain them. Don't offer them tea. Don't offer thoughts tea. Which, I hear the traffic. Oh, I better check my tire pressure. I'm offering that thought tea by going with it. But no, I hear the traffic. I feel my breath. Leave the front door and the back door of your mind open, you would say. And don't entertain the thoughts. Don't offer them tea. So that's a practice to settle whatever restlessness, whatever agitation might be happening in the realm of discursive activity, thinking, spinning, monkey mind, swinging from thought to thought to thought. Well, no, let the monkey take a break. So you have to accept it, accept your mind as it is, and help it to rest. Help it to have some ease. The goal is peace, not accomplishment, not to have a rock solid, unwavering concentration. Some people go that way, but that's not the practice of peace. The practice of peace involves accepting things. If there are thoughts, there are thoughts. How do you move towards peace and ease in the midst of what's going on? When you accept what's there, and you encourage it to be its best. Just like you accept your body as it is, and you encourage it to be at ease. And just by accepting it, being present to it, being intimate with it, that's the support it needs to be its best. So actually it's one thing. It sounds like two things, accepting things as it is and helping it to be their best. That's actually one thing. So the final, there is no final stage. I was about to say the final stage of this schema that I present for meditation practice. Number one, finding your seat. Don't take your seat for granted. Find it again. Find it anew. Be fully present to it. Don't take it for granted. Inhabiting your body. Close that short distance you might be from your body. Be in your body. Accept your body. Be intimate with your body. Then the mind, the discursive mind. How do you work with that? Thoughts come and go. Just don't offer them any tea. Return to the moment. Return to the breath. Perhaps count the breath as a pedagogical help to monitor whether or not you're making effort in calming the mind, allowing the mind to come to ease. The quote unquote final step is just to let go. No method. You're just here. Sounds arise and pass away. Sensations arise and pass away. Thoughts arise and pass away. Just this sphere of presentness, without agenda, without any task. You're just here. And everything comes. And everything comes and validates you, supports you. It's hard to find the right words. Dogen has a phrase, if you carry yourself forward and experience myriad things is delusion, that the myriad things come forth and experience themselves is awakening. That's the 12th century Japanese Zen philosophy. So in this final stage, the traffic just comes and manifests your life spontaneously. The feeling of air in your lungs is there. You're just here receiving the spontaneous arising of creation. Creation is coming into being moment by moment by moment. And you're just there. You're not doing anything. You're not finding your seat. You're not inhabiting your body. You're not calming the monkey mind. Perfect stillness. And the dynamism of the universe coming into being each moment. That's called shikantaza. Just sitting. You're not doing anything. And that's a very subtle place in which to rest. But it is very, very restful. So don't despair if what I just said about the final stage doesn't make much sense, because there's lots you can do before you don't do. You know, you can practice simple mindfulness when you sit down with full awareness. You can practice coming home to the body. You can practice gently quelling the busyness of the mind. And that discipline will be valuable. And if it's done with orientation of acceptance of who you are right now and nurturing your being, it will be of benefit. And your understanding can grow from there. One final little practice that I'd like to recommend is the take-homes for this morning. Well, there's the schema that I presented, right? That's one take-home. Review it again. You know. So approaching your Zazen practice, your meditation practice, your Zen practice, with some consistency, it helps to have the schema. You know, it can be helpful. So, you know, in the schemas, you know, first finding your seat. Don't just plop down. You're taking your seat at Buddha's seat of enlightenment, the Bodhimanda. So you bow to it, and then you sit down with awareness, with care. You really find your seat, take your seat. And step 2 is inhabit your body. Bring yourself home to this body, this hump of red flesh is a Zen phrase, you know, come home to this hump of red flesh, be there for it. Stilling the turbulent waters of thinking, gently. And just letting go. No, not doing anything, no method, You're just there. You're not elsewhere. You're not in the past. You're not in the future. You're right here, but you have no particular agenda. You're not trying to follow the breath. You're not trying to relax the body. You're just here. So that's the schema. That's one take home is the schema. Let's see. That's what, 4 steps? Not 1, 2, yeah. No. The 4-step schema for Zazen practice. The other take home is mindfulness. Doing things habitually, net energy loss. Doing things with full awareness, net energy gain. Experimenting with that proposal. Finding something that you normally do habitually and making a commitment to yourself to make that a point of practice. For example, at Green Gulch, when I was working in the kitchen, I noticed a paper towel dispenser. It had this lever, that you push down to so the thing would spit out or extend more paper towels out. And we wash our hands a lot in the kitchen. Every time you handle something, if you sneeze, we wash our hands and dry our hands off. And people, myself included, would go to that paper towel dispenser, and you can hear this rattling noise, and then the rip of the paper towel. And actually, there was an identical paper towel dispenser in the upstairs bathroom that was broken from that practice, that lack of practice. So I said, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to be ridiculously mindful for a while. Every time I approach that paper towel dispenser, and I'm going to go, bzz, bzz, maybe a little bit more. Bzz, okay. And so that became a point of practice. Something that I recognized I was doing habitually. I ritualized it into a ritualized instance of mindfulness. So, lack of mindfulness, habitual activity, net energy, you leak chi, you lose some of your vital energy. Mindfulness, net energy gain, you're nurturing your chi, you're nurturing your inner vitality. Experiment with it, find something and try it and see if that's true for you. Don't take my word for it, find something that you're always doing habitually and choose that as a point of practice. Now this last take home that I haven't mentioned yet is sitting still. Sometimes a Zen teacher, we're in meditation, right? During a period of zazen, you'll hear this voice move out. Don't move. No. Now, this practice is a really interesting one. If you take it up, is you make, after you found your seat and you've settled into your seat, make a commitment to yourself not to move a muscle. Of course, you will move muscles. So do it gently. Say, I want to feel what it's like to be super chill, super relaxed. I'm just going to sit here and not move a muscle. Sit perfectly still. Now, this is a practice that I got from Jack Kornfield. And he would say, you're sitting there and you've made a commitment not to move a muscle. You notice your cheek is itching. Breathe in, breathe out, and let go. You notice the impulse to scratch. So you breathe in, breathe out, let go of the impulse to scratch. It's still itching. Feel an impulse to scratch. Breathe in, breathe out, let go. Still itching, and then another impulse. You really want to scratch it. Breathe in, breathe out. Then with mindfulness and full awareness, raise the hand. Scratch the cheek. Bring the hand back down. Not moving a muscle unless you've done it in this ritualized form. Otherwise, you sit perfectly still. And you won't. You won't. But what will happen? What will happen if you take up this practice, and I recommend it. I don't recommend it as passionately as I recommend the schema. So you don't so you have structure to your meditation. the 4-point schema, and the mindfulness versus habit energy. I think those are really, really good. This one may be too much for you, but if you can get into it, here's what goes on. You will notice, sometimes you'll sit there and you'll notice autonomic muscular contraction. You know, it just happened. You know, you didn't have an impulse to do it. It's just autonomic, you know, or something will twitch. And then sometimes you'll notice a habitual thing, you know, like something, a habitual way you scratch your head. And you say, oh, wow, I didn't fully intend that. That was habit energy. And then you'll notice the distinction between, you know, autonomic things going on. And you'll notice habit energy, where you adjusted a shoulder, but you didn't do it with full awareness. It was kind of like a habitual adjusting of the shoulder. You'll notice that, and that noticing, accepting it as it is transformative. And and then you'll notice what it feels like to actually choose to fully do something. And that's really interesting information. You know, when you can really see, oh, I made this commitment not to move a muscle, and there I habitually, you know, stroke my neck, or whatever you do, you know, you'll notice that. And that's interesting information. It's not, you know, you're not trying to judge yourself when you take up the practice of sitting perfectly still. You won't sit perfectly still, but you take up the practice anyway. You don't judge yourself, you just notice the information. You clarify habit energy. And that is really, really good if you can do that. Clarifying habit energy is the first step to quelling habit energy in going into more peacefulness. And if you do this practice that I'm recommending of Jack Cornfield's, you know, the vow not to move, even though they're moving, but still, you reset the vow of sitting perfectly still, not moving a muscle. You can enter some profound states of deep relaxation and rock solid physical presence. That is really intriguing. Don't get too attached to any of these things I'm saying, but with this practice of not moving a muscle, sitting perfectly still, to the extent that you can, with wisdom, with gentleness, with acceptance, and nurturing spirit, you can see that there's unexplored depths of relaxation. And I've come to the feeling that there's no limit to how relaxed you can become. Relaxation is limitless. Being chill is limitless. And this practice can kind of open that door and you go, wow, there's something I can explore. I can be more relaxed without drugs, you know, without, you know, oxycodone or what have you. I can be more relaxed than I've ever been. So that's really intriguing. And you can be very, very rock solid present. You can, wow, I'm right here. And that's another realm of presence that you begin to see, hey, you know, we say be in the moment. We say be present. What's the title of the book that Eckhart Tolle wrote, his first one? Something about now. But doing the practice of Zazen, and especially this not moving, you see that the notion of being present, it's not definite. There's no defining boundary to it. There's no limit to how present you can be. We are limitless beings, and we're limited beings at the same time. So we'll never reach the end of presence because it's limitless, but we can grow. We can become more and more present. But once again, everything's impermanent. It's always changing. Conditioned phenomena are suffering. If you try to grab onto something, it'll hurt. because everything's changing. And if it's, it's right up onto a moving something, it's going to scratch your skin. If you try to grasp onto anything in life, you hurt life, and you feel the consequences. So everything is changing. It's nothing can be grasped onto. If you try to grasp on, you'll get hurt. The goal is peace. It's not super concentration. It's not cultivating a new superpower, being able to read minds or levitate, or even have strong presence. It's peace. Choosing peace, moment by moment by moment. Accepting. And peace entails accepting. If you can't accept, you're not at peace. But peace entails helping, nurturing, not resignation, but how do I support this? How do I help this mind, this body, this situation? How do I find a way to fulfill my intention to be of benefit to beings? If we refuse to accept what's going on, we have no peace. If we drop our vow to nurture all being, we have no peace either. But you can always choose to move in the direction of peace. You can always do that. So if the mind is noisy, and if trying to calm the mind is hurting, then you can let go of trying to calm the mind and just accept the mind. If the busy mind is causing tension and you feel you really need a break, you can go in the direction of calming the mind. Each situation has its configuration, but each situation has a direction towards more peace. And if you prioritize peace, your practice will be safe. If you prioritize peace, finding a direction that moves towards peace, your practice will nurture you. Everything's changing. You can't get a hold of anything. If you try to get a hold of something, it's going to hurt. The conditioned phenomena. That's what it means, conditioned phenomena of suffering, when we try to grab onto them. Because even though you love flowers, they fade. They also. But you can find peace. You can move towards peace. And that schema that I presented is secondary to peace. Peace is the prime directive. So tweak the schema, employ it or let go of the schema as needed when you honor the prime directive. I'm going to nurture my life now, whatever it takes. I'm going to accept myself now, whatever condition I'm in. And that will keep your practice safe. If you stick to the schema, you can maybe get caught by the schema. Well, that's enough. Go on for a bit now. But before we go, if there's any questions or anything you'd like to ask, including our folks online, please do so. We good? You can be good. So the closing chant on that same page. May our intention equally extend to every being and place, with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.